All right, Saturday night, week 2 college football breakdown here. Boone Pickens Stadium in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I've been to Stillwater twice, loved it both times. We got Arizona State heading to Oklahoma State in a primetime matchup. I think Oklahoma State was somewhat noteworthy because they played last Thursday night. They looked great offensively. I mean, Spencer Sanders is now in his 4th year as the starter. He's had his well-known struggles at some points, specifically with turnovers, but he looked sharp last week in that season opener. Mike Gundy, I mean, if you remember last year, Oklahoma State was a really run-heavy team with Jalen Warren, and they really pounded the ground game. I mean, that offense came out slinging last week. I think the more noteworthy thing, though, is probably that they kind of collapsed defensively in the 4th quarter. I think it's somewhat of an overreaction, though, because when you get up as much as they did, first game of the season, trying to get some young guys in there. Credit Central Michigan. They fought back, ended up putting 44 points up, but I do think it's somewhat misleading. I think it kind of changes how people viewed this Oklahoma State team. I know they have a lot to replace off of last year's defense, which was phenomenal. I love their defense last year. But I like the way that those second-level players stopped the run against Central Michigan, and I think they got a really good front four as well. So that front seven is not a concern to me. It's really just kind of that back four maybe. And once again, I think a lot of what happened on last Thursday night can be credited to some of those depth pieces. So I don't even know if it's the frontline guys that we should be worrying about. The reality of it is this Arizona State program is dead. They got ravaged by the transfer portal this offseason. 6 coaches left. Herm Edwards is obviously under NCAA investigation, and they're a very thin team, and I don't really know how talented they are. I think they got a few things going for them, specifically offensively. I mean, their run game is good. They brought in Valladay from Wyoming, who's run for over 3,000 yards in his career. Daniel Nagata is a guy that I've always liked at Arizona State, but their passing game with Emory Jones, I don't think Emory Jones was responsible for all the problems that Florida had last year. If you look at his counting numbers, he was actually pretty good, but 13 picks last year. He's got not much to work with on the outside. Arizona State is extremely thin at wide receiver. I think that's something that could hurt them in what otherwise might be looked at as an advantageous spot. Probably more notably, though, I worry about Arizona State's offensive line going up in this matchup. Like I said, I feel really, really good about Oklahoma State's front four defensively. They got a lot coming back there, and I think they're going to be able to get after Jones and force him into some bad decisions because that's kind of what his MO is. Spencer Sanders is a guy that you really got to watch out for. We've seen plenty of examples of guys who for 2-3 years look like mediocre quarterbacks, and then boom, they break out. Now listen, a game against Central Michigan, it's not enough of a sample size to say that, he's having a Heisman level senior year, but it's not unfathomable to think that Spencer Sanders could have a very, very good season. I mean, he's always been mobile. He's a threat with his legs, and the arm talent's always been there. It seemed as if they played very conservative last year. And like I said, they came out anything but conservative in that season opener. I like their offensive line as well. I thought they got a lot better throughout the course of last season. I think Arizona State's interior defensive line could be okay, but they've had to move some guys from the outside into their interior defensive line, which kind of takes away from their pass rush. So I worry about that. I think their problems at linebacker will come later in the year because they just have no depth there. But I do think their secondary is vulnerable. Oklahoma State showed me enough in their passing game, something that they really didn't show last year, that I actually think that Sanders can kind of have I'm not going to say a direct repeat performance, but this is not a very hard matchup. He's going to have time to throw, and this is a pretty vulnerable Arizona State secondary. So looking towards a play here, I'm leaning towards laying it with Oklahoma State. Once again, I was high on Arizona State last year, but with all the coaches that left, I mean, their defensive coordinator, Antonio Pierce, was probably the biggest name to leave. And then, I mean, obviously they lose their quarterback. They lost a lot in the portal, kind of the dark cloud over that program. It's certainly not a team that I'm going to be afraid to play against. They're super thin, and it's really going to take just one or two bad things to happen before they collapse. So I lean pretty heavily towards Oklahoma State. If you're asking me right now, it's probably going to be on my card in some way. I've actually already released my best bets here for week 2. Got those out this morning here on Wednesday. I'm looking to have the rest of my card out by Thursday. The main place you can follow me is on Twitter at Fordham Betting. I'll also leave all of my other information in the description below. One more thing, too, head over to proud90.com. They got all your golf apparel needs. You see this shirt right here. I know you've been staring at it the whole time. Head over to proud90.com. Code Fordham at checkout. It's going to get you 15% off your order. All the other information will be in the description. Appreciate y'all watching the video. This should be a great game to watch. And like I said, I probably am going to be on Oklahoma State in some way. So stay tuned.